Dear Mrs. Vice President, dear Mrs. Treasurer, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my great pleasure and honor to welcome you at the conference, The Role of UNIMA in the Recognition, Development and Importance of Puppetry in the 20th Century and its Visions for the 21st Century. This conference is a part of celebrations of the 19th anniversary of UNIMA. The International Union of Puppeteers was founded in 1929 here in Prague and was the first in the role of international non-governmental theater organizations associated later on to UNESCO. And the curiosity is that UNIMA was not the only one organization of those I mentioned a while ago, because later, after World War II, other theater organizations were also founded in Prague. I refer to International Theater Institute, ASITESH, the Association for Theater for Children and Youth, and OISTAT, the international organization of scenographers, theater architects and technicians. The headquarters of UNIMA were based in Prague until 1972, and I would like just to make a small advertisement of this book, where this part of UNIMA history is documented. The editor is Nina Balíková, and the book was published by the Chrudim Puppetry Museum. It's in Czech and English version, and it's available through the museum, so maybe Mrs. Chalupová later on will explain how to get it. And it's a beautiful contribution to history of UNIMA for the future and for the memory. Why is it important to commemorate this organization today? That's the question we should talk about right in this conference. For me personally, UNIMA is not only a platform for international cooperation in puppetry and puppet theater, but also for solving, in some times, of political problems related to human values and artistic freedom. As we witnessed it in the past, for example, during the era of Cold War, but it's true that the geopolitical situation has changed since then, but this mission of UNIMA is valid nowadays too. That's my strong belief. I wish you fruitful and inspiring day today. And now I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Tita Limová, who is the head of the UNESCO department of the Ministry of Culture, Czech Republic.
Dobrý den, vážené dámy, vážení pánové, dovolte, abych vás přivítala na půdě Ministerstva kultury a popřála všechno nejlepší k 90. narozeninám UNIMě. Radši jsem si to napsala, protože nejsem tak zdatný řečník. Loutkové divadlo je osobitým vyjadřovacím prostředkem, který nás provází po celý život. Měla jsem tu čest být u zápisu loutkářství společné nominace České republiky a Slovenské republiky, tedy vpravdě československého projektu, na reprezentativní seznam nemateriálního kulturního dědictví v lidstva v Addis Abebě v prosinci roku 2016. A musím říct, že když se naše tradice loutkářství zapsala po bok jiných významných světových prvků tradiční a lidové kultury, vzpomněla jsem si v dojetí a s úsměvem na mnoho nezapomenutelných loutkových představení, která jsem od dětství zažila. Své místo v tak prestižním soupisu si 100% zaslouží. Loutkové divadlo je výborným příkladem umělecké formy, která se neustále rozvíjí a hledá nové vyjadřovací možnosti, která čerpá v historické tradici, ale neustrne v nějaké vyhraněné formě, naopak se stále překonává a vyvíjí. Je fenoménem velmi demokratickým, kdo z nás nebyl nikdy divákem nebo loutkohercem, velmi pestrým a odrážejícím rozmanitost světových kultur a obracejícím se na všechny věkové generace, neboť pro loutkové divadlo může být zpracované vpravdě jakékoliv téma. 90. výročí založení Mezinárodní loutkářské unie UNIMA, organizace, která loutkové divadlo dlouhodobě podporuje a je dobrým prostředníkem spolupráce loutkářů z celého světa, je, myslím, pěknou příležitostí se o loutkářství něco více dozvědět a nechat na sebe působit kouzlo loutkových představení. Děkuji vám za pozornost a přeji krásný den.
And now I would like to invite Mrs. Karen Smith, the Vice President of UNIMA, to give her speech. So please, you can sit.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. My speech is from Dadi Padamji. I will merely be reading his welcome speech. Unfortunately, he is unable to be here, but here is his message for us all today. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, sponsors and hosts, UNIMA members and friends. We are all honored to be present at the Czech UNIMA National Center's celebration of the founding of Union Internationale de la Marionnette in Prague 90 years ago. I am sure there will be many such celebrations all over the world commemorating this important anniversary of our organization, one of the oldest international theater organizations in the world. On behalf of UNIMA International, I would like to thank the Ministry of Culture of the Czech Republic, which has generously supported and financed this event of yours in Prague. The Czech National Center of UNIMA, the Arts and Theatre Institute, the Chrudem Puppetry Museum, and the Czech Commission for UNESCO. All have contributed to this event in the city where our association had its beginnings. As we all know, UNIMA today is spread around the globe with national centers and representatives in more than 90 countries. I believe it's about 100 countries. Meanwhile, its international headquarters in Charleville-Mézières, France, has helped initiate within that city the World Puppet Theatre Festival, the Festival Mondial des Théâtres de Marionnettes, the International Puppetry Institute, Institut International de la Marionnette, as well as its School of Puppetry, the École Nationale Supérieure des Arts de la Marionnette, thus creating an important center and confluence of our art form. Through our organization's association with UNESCO and our support for the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we have come a long way since our inception in 1929 and subsequent renaissance in 1957. The organization assisted in the exchange of puppetry artists during the Cold War period and the latter part of the 20th century. These bonds remain with many of us who are present today, as also within others who may not be present with us, but in spirit. UNIMA International's official celebration of the 90th anniversary of our founding will be held in Charleville-Mézières, France, on the 22nd of September 2019. It will feature an exhibition, People and Puppets, UNIMA, Believing in and Creating a Common Future for Puppetry, to 1929 to 2019, followed by a conference and a roundtable, with the day ending with a party to celebrate UNIMA's 90th anniversary. There will also be meetings and celebrations at UNIMA headquarters throughout the 20th iteration of the Festival Mondial de Théâtre de Marionnettes, which runs 20th to the 29th of September. UNIMA International and the city of Charleville-Mézières beckon all who are keen to participate in this celebration. I thank our UNIMA, this is Dadi talking, I thank our UNIMA International Vice President Karen Smith, and our Treasurer, Lucille Bodson, who are present at this function, and Karen, who has graciously accepted the responsibility of reading my opening speech. As usual, I would like to end with a quotation. While all answers to the manifold queries are not to be found in museums, across the vistas of time, one glimpses a variety of materials, processes, embellishments, woven into a common fabric. This is what I feel constitutes a tradition. Though some of this may fade and decay, a vital part of it lives and constitutes what may be termed the spirit or soul of a people. It is the sustenance from which are born the myriad creative forms on which posterity grows, thrives, and burgeons into ever-new revitalized generations. It is this essence that constitutes real museums. Every item worthy to be displayed has to be alive, vital. Museums must now serve the general public, lay open the almost endless landscapes of the entire globe, as also reflect the close, intimate elements that constitute our daily life and thus become an indispensable part of popular education. And so museums, naturally, enable people to understand life. This was part of a speech delivered by Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay, who was born in 1903. She was a pioneer, an Indian pioneer in the conservation and support of folk arts and crafts and puppetry. And it was part of her address at the inauguration of the 10th Assembly of World Crafts Council in New Delhi, India, in 1986. Thank you.
Our program continues with two keynotes. We are very glad that we have here Mr. Michael Meshke, who is an important personality of all the UNIMA history. So please, could you give your speech?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
It is a bit early to speak, but I will do my best. Luckily, I prepared myself for this event. First of all, I wish to thank especially warmly Nina Malikova, all her staff, including energetic and effective Barbara, and the Czech Center of UNIMA, of course, and also ITI. And I must confess, it was quite a surprise for me to learn that Prague is not only the place where UNIMA was born, but somehow, in some way, the capital of theater in Europe. I didn't know this, my ignorance. And thank you for generous invitation for me to speak today at the 90th Jubilee of UNIMA. I greet also warmly the Vice President, Karen Smith, and our beloved Treasurer, Lucille Baudson, there she is, who represent the President and the Secretary General of UNIMA. This is also a personal pleasure for me because of special bonds which I have with Prague. I need only to mention Kafka. I once came here to look for his grave and ended up at the Jewish cemetery where nobody knew about him. This was during the socialist or communist period. And somebody told me he might be laying at the new cemetery. So I took a tram and went half an hour away from Prague center, and there was a deserted cemetery, nobody, but gigantic, and not one soul, and heavy rain. And at the end of one of the alleys in the cemetery, I saw a little black lady, black-dressed, who did this sign. And I wondered what, and if she meant me, and there was nobody else, so I approached, and when I came there, she was gone. But I looked in that direction, and I stood right in front of Kafka's tomb. And I had never understood how she knew that me, the only visitor, was looking for Kafka. But there are other bonds also, like the brother Foreman coming to Sweden, invited by us, the Theater Drak of Krofta coming to Sweden, invited. Even when Joseph Vitek came to help us produce puppets at the theater. And of course, Trinka, we had festivals in Stockholm about him, and when he died, the whole theater entrance was decorated in black, mourning him. Now let me share some of my memories from the past and my wishes for the future. In the beginning, there was a gathering of some artists in Prague in 1929. I was not there, so please bear with me if looking back into a fog of history and myth mixed, I rely on my imagination. The truly reliable history of UNIMA has still to be written. Let me start by honoring the founders of UNIMA by some name dropping. There were gentlemen like Ignol, Kasper, Petrushka, Pulcinella, Chanche, Vesely, Löwenhaupt, Hardy, Brome, Link, Gini, Bogaritev, Wortelmann, Puoni, and many more. And there were Spebel and Hurvinek. I am not sure if they were founders, but they were there. I can see them, I hope you can see them too, spending nights in the cozy taverns of Prague, filling their glasses with crazy, utopic dreams about a world dominance of puppets, yet sober enough to write and sign the Foundation Act of UNIMA. An association of friends for friends was born. That is, male friends. I heard of no woman in sight. Beyond the theme of internationalism, they probably discussed timeless professional issues like repertory, tradition and renewal, and not the least, new forms. Those were the days of Bauhaus, not to forget. During the 30s then, UNIMA was developing while the world was darkening. This was possible through the perseverance of people like Jan Malik, the first Secretary General. What a challenge it must have been to our ancestors while the greatest crime in history was being prepared. As the world rose from the ashes of World War II, UNIMA could continue like after an interruption, because the foundation spirit of friendship and solidarity had survived. And most important, because artists continued to create. Harry Kramer's mechanical puppets incarnated both post-war despair and unstoppable creativity. Puppet theater always was a mirror of society. As I remember it, the 40s and the 50s reflected the need in society to rebuild, in spite of the political polarization which split the world into East and West. In social countries, puppetry was recognized as an art for a folk art, nationalized and widely subsidized. In the capitalist West, puppeteers struggled for recognition and financial means, and also for audiences, because people had other things in mind than going to puppet theaters. Surviving companies from the war offered a repertory from before, marked by conventions about what was puppet theater and what was not puppet theater. Conservatism and renewal competed. During the 60s, new artists tried to break through. For example, Franziska Temerson, who designed the pioneer production of Ubi Roi in Stockholm in 1964. All this is also well described in the book which you mentioned there is a beautiful description by Margareta Nicolescu, catching really the spirit of those days, of the 60s. So the 70s brought new concepts of life also to the puppet theater, committed to contemporary interests of conflict, like the bread and puppet theater, to the Vietnam War. I try to respond with poetic approaches for my own sake, because poetry is always necessary in puppetry and should always be encouraged. In 1973, freshly elected member of the executive committee, I hosted this committee in Stockholm and grabbed my chance to suggest a declaration of openness and for tolerance with inclusive definitions of all puppetry arts and forms. The 1973 Stockholm Declaration was unanimously voted, then soon forgotten. Nevertheless, the decade would bring fruitful changes. From Warsaw, UNIMA's second Secretary General Henryk Jurkowski started a much-needed forum for communication with the periodical UNIMA Informations, open to all and distributed by post. There was not email. News came in from outer space, meaning from cultures outside of Europe. Some distant representatives who could afford it visited and also became executive members, like Mayor Contractor from India or Taji Kawajiri from Japan. Jacques Félix was now the third Secretary General, truly committed to global expansion, encouraging representatives of new countries to join, such as Togo. The more we saw of the world, the bigger the longing for contacts and expansion. The world was truly shrinking. We created a committee called the Third World Committee, which soon turned out to be insufficient because there was not one third world, there were several worlds to discover. The name had nothing to do with the post-colonial nomination of developing countries. We soon suggested our own dissolution and replacement by one committee for each continent. And most important of all in this time, when the new national centers were born in India, Thailand, Greece, Iceland, Mexico, and elsewhere. Cultural exchange intensified, much thanks to cooperate with the Charleroi festivals, also headed by Felix, opening to all art from all distant cultures. And to me personally, especially Japan's treasures made my hearts and many other hearts beat faster. Bunraku master Minosuke Yoshida, string puppet player Takedas, Kurumaninyo player Koryo Nishikawa, as well as the unseen traditions of Karakuri Ningyo introduced to us by Yasuko Senda. In 1980, the 13th UNIMA Congress took place in Washington, USA. Nancy Staub offered a truly worldwide festival, unseen before in scale, scope, and boldness of visions, including representatives from repressed countries in Latin America. We are now in the 80s, when longtime Executive Committee member Margareta Niculescu introduced the professional training, her most important contribution also to UNIMA. Although the high school is recognized by the French government, it is open to students from all over the world. Margareta never missed to get her mission strengthened and confirmed. Many of us may remember her always asking, "Tu m'aimes toujours?" And that was not a question, but an order to obey with pleasure. Subjectively speaking, those were the days, my friend. I thought they'd never end. I dare to state that all the mentioned achievements and those not mentioned here today were motorized by pure passion. Anyway, there was no choice because there was never money, something all national centers experienced. But in my memory, it was a joy to be part of some of UNIMA's most prosperous decades. Now, what made UNIMA live so long? To find out if there is any special qualities of UNIMA, it's not given. Let me look at the application within the organization of general human values, such as communication, idealism, solidarity, democracy. I believe communication is the key word to understand UNIMA's importance to promote contacts, exchange of information and experience, understanding the exotic or unknown, create personal relations and lasting friendships. With today's invading new techniques, there is no lack of information, but we are experiencing that information does not guarantee anything. It does not guarantee increased knowledge, which is a key to understanding each other. Good communication is a tool to abolish ready-made ideas, to correct prejudice. One such prejudice, hard to kill, was that tradition and renewal are opposed, while they are each other's condition. My German teacher Harro Siegel in Braunschweig organized a festival in 1957. Among the performers was an outsider, Harry Kramer, reputed not to be a real puppeteer. With unorthodox forms, distorted, amputated characters rolling over the stage on wheels to Aretha Franklin's sad voice, Kramer evoked heartbreaking post-war suffering and despair. But this man also gave a speech at a seminar, surprisingly talking about tradition, how he had discovered techniques and mechanics in traditional children's toys, which had inspired his creativity. This rebellion built a bridge between simple folk traditions and radical avant-garde. Years later, it influenced my production of King Ubu. It struck me how deeply rooted the value of idealism is in UNIMA. Idealism. I said idealism. truly part of her definition. Because idealism united the founders in Prague and still is what makes the organization go round. UNIMA exists thanks to all the non-remunerated work being done by pure idealism. We need it that way, we keep it that way. Idealism means to imagine a better world, as utopic it may seem. An organization which is there to serve an art must constantly defend the right and the freedom to dream. Life often challenges our capacity to show solidarity. The Italian reformer Matteo Renzi, talking about the recent European elections, described solidarity as the constitutional, eternal element of our identity as Europeans. That makes me think. A non-governmental organization can offer concrete action, take uncomfortable stands when needed, and it is much needed. May it be to protect colleagues in difficulty, save the threatened tradition or a splendid museum from disappearance. Most of all, solidarity is needed when democracy is in crisis, when political reality comes in conflict with our conscience. I like to quote Idoia Otegui, the present Secretary General. She really hits the spot when she said, UNIMA has existed so many years because of much diplomacy. We have to deal with many countries, different regimes, religions, political ideas. Most of all, we must fight for what our statutes say, respect for the human being. That is the problem. The answers can be multiple. Talking about statutes, I remember the 1969 year UNIMA Congress in Prague. I was heading a small Swedish delegation. 1 year before, the world was shocked by the crash of the Prague Spring. The Congress agenda included some changes of statutes to improve democracy, elaborated by 2 Czech graduates, Dr. Erik Kolar and Dr. Zdeněk Bestek. The Russians at that time, headed by UNIMA President Sergei Obraztsov, rejected the propositions loud and violently. The executive committee members from Warsaw packed countries observed an eloquent silence. It was very embarrassing, but timidly I expressed our support for the propositions, which were very simple, elementary propositions in a democratic direction. Consternation. Who was this extraterrestrial who dared join the ball of the great ones? The statute changes were abruptly rejected with a blow of the hammer, boom, like Khrushchev at the United Nations. No democratic discussion. The authors shunned. That was realpolitik in UNIMA, worthy a Kafka novel. I had no hint then that 17 years later, another serious crisis about statutes and voting rights would shake UNIMA. Generally, in socialist countries, membership was collective and automatic, meaning that the employees at state theaters had membership reductions and 1 vote each, while in other countries, members had to pay individually. As a result, the beautiful principle of 1 member, 1 voice made East unfairly outnumber West, an increasing voting problem. Protests came from national centers, especially from the Italian center. Wild and embarrassing walks finally resulted in new statutes. UNIMA changed from direct to indirect democratic voting system. Decision-making was transferred to the council, elected in proportion to the number of members in each national center. It ended to be one more victory for democracy. Now the future. In order to look forward, I take a little step for help from the past. At the end of last millennium, I had my doubts about the future of UNIMA. Our societies all over were marked by growing materialism and egoism combined. A frightening contempt of knowledge and of cultural heritage invaded the world. These tendencies continue to be part of today's reality. There is a need for counterweights and for values like those I just mentioned. Will UNIMA be part of this necessary struggle in the future? UNIMA exists only because there is puppet theater. Puppet theater exists only because there are artists, generation after generation, who do puppet theater. From my own generation, I remember colleagues who paved ways, such as Jan Wilkowski with Svirtala, Ariel Buffano with Missa Criolla, Peter Schumann with Bread and Puppets, Juan Baixa and Juan Miró with Moriel Merma. You see, name dropping is useful for our history. It shows us that new generations constantly find comfort in the magic of theater, as does the audience, and that is what gives continuity. Daddy, where there is continuity, there is future. UNIMA's president is in Dadi Podamje, the first non-European president, is a highly qualified symbol of UNIMA's successful globalization. For once, a successful form of globalization. Where there is internationalism, there is future. But life is not easy, never was. Not for humanity, not for artists who choose puppet theater. The harder it is, the greater is the need of comfort and joy for humanity as well as for the creators themselves. Therefore, UNIMA's mission to support and promote the artists is so important, maybe UNIMA's very first mission. From an artist of the past to the artist of the future, I express the wishes that no difficulty may prevent you from creating and entertain audiences with laughter and tears. Give them contents of importance and new form expressions to remember. Avoid the easy. Search challenges. Preserve knowledge and tradition, skillful craftsmanship, demanding techniques in articulation and manipulation of puppets. Learn authenticity of movement. The more refined your instruments are, the bigger your chances to reach the brains and hearts of others. Work is love made visible, said the poet Khalil Gibran. And for UNIMA as an organization, what will UNIMA be like in the future? What characters will shape her action? What characters will shape UNIMA's action? UNIMA is not a religion, as little as puppet theater is. I wish UNIMA remains a non-bureaucratic, border-crossing institution for contacts and exchange between artists of the world and all those who love our arts. May this international union for the puppet theater live up to the natural destiny to be high authority in matters of ethics, of social justice, of trade union business, of action for the young, as initiator of solidarity when needed, to mention just a few fields of activity for now and for tomorrow. The old lady is a mirror of the world. She can bring out the best and the worst in us. If she has lived as much as 90 years, there must be something with her that protects her from disaster. Could it be an unselfish soul? By the way, the future is already here. What you do decides today shapes what you do and decide today, shapes your tomorrow. Therefore, I like to conclude with the words of a friend, an Indian philosopher, Subhash Malik. Malik, but Indian. Be, not become. Act, not react. Happy birthday, UNIMA.
And now I would like to welcome Mrs. Denisa Kirchnerová, the director of S+H Theater, which stands for the already mentioned characters of Spabel and Horvinek. Please, it's yours.
It's probably here, so I will move a bit closer. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here today. I will get ready a bit. Jenom pomůžete mi s těma fotkama? Výborně. Můžeme o tom, Je to vaše, ne? Ano. Tak vaj. Možná, já to nevím, jestli tak z toho vyskočíme. Tak dáme jenom jednu a dáme tuhletu. Dáme jednu společnou a já dám tuhle. Nebudu s tím hejbat. Dobře. Tak. So, dear friends of puppets and puppet theater, let me congratulate all of us on the 90 years of UNIMA, for the 90 years of support for the development of the art of puppetry and cooperation. Spabel and Horvinek Theater, which I represent here today, was founded by Professor Josef Skupa, who was one of those who led the foundations for the modern professional puppet theater and was also one of the presidents of UNIMA. Our theater derives its name from the central duo of wooden heroes, father and son, Spabel and Horvinek, which Professor Josef Skupa brought into the world and imparted to them the unmistakable situational, mental, and verbal humor, as well as ingenuity in staging. As time went by, he added to the pair a dog, Žerik, Horvinek's girlfriend Manička, and her grandmother Kateřina. She joined them as last. Next year, Mr. Spabel will celebrate his 100th birthday. His son joined him 6 years later, so the dialogue between these two puppet heroes has gone on for 93 years, with the fourth generation of artists and performers serving them. And because our heroes are carved from a linden wood, we say, with some exaggeration, that we are running a linden wood relay race. Let me devote this speech to look back at the life of these wooden heroes, and especially the thoughts and memories of their performers, creators, and friends of puppets, which still touch us and are a source of enjoyment for all lovers of puppet theater. I should say that my memories are rather personal because my parents devoted all their creative life to this theater. My father was Miloš Kirchner, a pupil of Professor Josef Skupa, the interpreter of Spabel and Horvinek, and my mother was Helena Štáková, who was long the interpreter of Manička and her granny Kateřina. Moreover, they were devoted to theater management as I am now. Theater art has always meant to me, and in my childhood more intensely, so as it was more immediate to me, something sacred. For a long time I thought there could be no better calling which would offer the possibility of seeing things plainly, aptly, wisely, with wit and unexpected insight. I think Spabel with Hurvinek often proved to be able to cope with this difficult task. My parents took their work for the Spabel and Hurvinek Theatre very seriously, and they devoted their lives to the service of the wooden Thalia. They were active in the theatre until their death. They believed that opportunity, these wooden heroes, thanks to their stylization and a specific view of the world, had the opportunity not only to speak cheerfully, but also to comment on situation in all seriousness. When I look back, the year 1929 was significant not only for us gathered here today, when on the occasion of the General Congress of Puppeteers held in May, UNIMA was established. It was also significant for our theatre. A second UNIMA Congress, which was held in Paris the same year, posed a great challenge to Professor Skupa and his person-based ensemble. This was the first time he went abroad as a representative of the Czechoslovak puppeteers and performed in a show as part of the Congress. These 3 evenings, in addition to retrospective cabaret, demonstrations and a simplified touring version of the successful Tito Previ made it possible to find the way to the hearts of the international audience, and Skupa was crowned with laurels. The enthusiastic reception of Skupa's theatre was contrasting with the problems that Skupa had to face with his puppets because of the bureaucracy. The position of the puppet theatre was not exactly dignified, and the puppeteers had to pay an entertainment tax. Thanks to Skupa's exclusive status and his production, which also elicited an enthusiastic response abroad, the ensemble contributed to a gradual change of perception of the puppet theatre, which was finally enshrined in a new Theatre Act of 1948. I am not an eminent theatre expert or a puppet theatre theorist, but I believe that the ideas I would like to review on the occasion of the 19th anniversary of UNIMA, as well as Spabel's approaching 100th birthday, do credit to the object of our interest, and that is the puppet. Josef Skupa had no doubt as the special status of the puppet. Since the belief in the puppet and its ability to fully convey a dramatic message is shared by our current ensemble, it remains the paradigm of our permanent work. With this work, Skupa influenced not only the marionette school, the way of playing with the puppet, the staging, the technology, and the content of performance, which in its context was modern and innovative, and of course influenced many other creators, such as the giant of the Czechoslovak animated film Jiří Trnka, who is most probably the author of the picture I cannot show you now because it got stuck. I will quote from his memories now. Since the age of 11, I have been studying and looking at his work until today. It is beautiful and memorable. He taught me a lot, first of all, to understand that puppets could express all the feelings, impressions, and passions of humans, which for me was a discovery and a little miracle which fascinates me and which I am still trying to grasp. During the last centuries, Spabel and Hurvinek evolved from original playful Dadaist concept to a concept with more complex ideas and verbal expressions. I listened with interest to what Professor Skupa said in one radio interview, because at the beginning we met a great response from an adult audience. Spabel and Hurvinek, they have many friends today and a lot of work, but few authors. Perhaps for adults one could find some, but there are few for children. Playing to children is the main focus of my mission. And although the success before adults are so flattering, I must admit that I am happiest playing to a children audience. I wish we had enough collaborators who are not only enthusiastic and committed, but especially some who really can think like children. When you look around, you see many things of literary and artistic value, and yet so few that truly speak to children. We would need artists to write things that are simple and studied with a clear and straightforward storyline, in which a subtle, inconspicuous educational message could be included. Things that would promote the generally accepted virtues in all simplicity, and would of course develop in children a sense of honor and justice and a consciousness of belonging to the whole, and which would be above all playful like a child. The infancy of Spejbl and Hurvinek was described by Professor Skupa as follows. Spejbl at first performed on his own, wagging his tongue, lecturing, and being above all a laughingstock, as he was so disaster-prone. Hurvinek to be his friend initially, but the audience would not have this. He was a spitting image of his father, so he just had to become his son. At that time, I was a teacher, socializing with the boys and the parents, with the educated and the educators. I recognized many of their weaknesses and mistakes, and I addressed this in a humorous way. Step by step, I am carrying out my original plan, to create original Czech puppets with humor which does not irritate and is never directed directly at a person, yet castigates the typical pettiness of the Czech in the street. In relation to the two puppets, my being is divided into two halves, one of which indicates what is in me of Hurvinek, and the other one is perhaps already becoming Spejbl. Spejbl and Hurvinek have thus grown into a distinctive pair whose features, attitude, verbal expressions, the vocabulary and peculiar logic are convincing and true to life. They have become naturally philosophizing clowns. It was not only my grandfather, Karel Kirchner, the organizer of the amateur puppet scene, who devoted his life to the wooden Thalia, but also my father, Miloš Kirchner, whom Grandpa essentially made to love the puppets. As Miloš Kirchner remembers, first of all, I didn't want to vigorously challenge the traditional conception of the characters entrusted to me. On the other hand, I had to avert the dangers of former conservatism, which would have signaled a loss of contact with the external world and time, and which as a result would have manifested itself as an uninterested pile of junk. We are an art house theater in time-honored tradition. The Spejbl and Hurvinek performers write their dialogues. This too is a way in which issues of current interest resonate through them. I would like to mention something about the future, which is touching how to work with the puppet, and that all together makes it's excerpted from a great speech of Eric Collard, which still touches us despite being given as early as 1967. Speaking about the art of today, I am not sure if I can operate with a term that's so subjective and vague, such as the notion of a living feeling. Being skeptical about contemporary art or art for today does not prevent me from believing that art should always be socially engaged. Admittedly, this engagement cannot be decreed. One cannot be ordered to write for today. Engaged art can only be created by engaged artists. Only then does the artist's worldview and life feel stem organically from the work. More easily than the puppet theater of today, one could talk about the contemporary puppet theater. The present concept is broader. It includes a piece of yesterday and tomorrow. It is between them a bridge and hence a guarantor of the context. To grow from the roots of the past, throw away what has grown old, embrace the new and grow into the future. The art of the present is at the same time a legacy and a prophecy, and precisely that which remains when art has discarded some, threw away some, it is what grows, accepting the new from the life sense of the present man. This is perhaps contemporary art. I see the syncretism of art in the first place, in unity of thought and emotion. In the century of the technical revolution, it is necessary to campaign against imminent technocracy by the power of art. Do not ask me to say more about the puppet theater of the future. I am not a prophet. I only know that it must be created by artists who will live their time and who will outpace it by a step. Now allow me to finish my speech with an excerpt from a documentary movie about Mr. Spejbl, which is produced by Czech TV to mark his 100th birthday. Spejbl is telling there, "You asked me, dear director, if I am sorry for anything. No, I am not. In the words of the classic, Everything it was, I was glad to be. If you were to tell me that people would talk about a piece of linden tree log that is about me, I would hardly believe you. If you told me I would have my own theater, and even in Prague, of course, with Hurvinek, I would suspect you were taking the mickey out of me. Going out and paying cash to go to the theater and watch a piece of wood that can't even open its mouth, this takes courage. Courage to look at me and see a piece of yourself, this is you. And to laugh with all of us. I like best such moments, and thank you for them wholeheartedly. I have now pleasure to invite you to the Spabel and Hurvinek Theatre on Davidská Street, where you are always welcomed. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. we will put on a show which will be free for you. It is just necessary to mention the word password UNIMA. So thank you very much for your attention.